virogatabaya abhayam pratistam yada astikyantvidantu chinumana Ramakrishna dasavayam.
Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahanau Punaktu, Sahaviryam Karvo Vahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu, Ma Vidvishravanai, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. It is Easter Sunday in the afternoon. We started out with meditation 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. We live streamed our satsang at 7:15. We're doing that now Sunday morning instead of Tuesday night because Sunday morning at 7:15 here is just after noon on the East Coast. So some of my students on the West and East Coast can actually tune into the satsang on a weekend, make it a part of their Sunday. Now we're in the afternoon here in the second half of our class on the Advaita of the avatars. I'm concentrating more on the avatar portion of that statement because we've had teachings about 2 or 3 months of Advaita teachings, as I said at the beginning, introduction in the first half. So we're looking more into the divine personality. And another thing that may be said about this evolution of consciousness, if you could call it that, is that these beings know that if they, be better put this way, that one being who is the avatar that comes many times knows that the Dharma is going to be rendered decrepit and old and useless over a few thousand years. So that's why about every 500 years they have to come back and resurrect it. So that was something I didn't mention about that idea of keeping the Dharma constant. Stalpakaya, they call it steady Dharma. So they have to come and resurrect it, and anything that's gotten outmoded or outdated or used in a bad way is going to be removed from the old Dharma, and it's going to be resurrected using the same principles that are always there Advaitically, but giving them a makeover in accordance with that day and age and those people. A good case in point is if you have fishermen for disciples, or maybe you have monks for disciples, or maybe you have householders for disciples, or your basic constituent is made up of different kinds of people, then you're going to have to appear to them according to the needs of that age. And that will change. But the thing that won't change is the essence of the Dharma. You might even have to give the Dharma itself a kind of facelift to make it understandable or comprehensible to those people. In this day and age, Vivekananda said, I want to give truth, dry, hard reason in the furnace of Jnanam, wisdom, and I want to give it sweet, spicy taste cooked in the kitchen of yoga. And I want to make it as easily digestible that a baby could digest it. So and he said, nobody knows how hard a task that is until you've tried it. So he wants to take these 4 yogas and make this good admixture and make it so accessible that even a spiritually immature person, like an infantile spiritual infant, could begin to understand it and get some attraction towards it, because divine attraction is going to take yoga maya first in the soul, and then they'll become attracted to path or teacher or dharma, And that can happen many ways too. I know in my own Sangha, a lot of the early people were attracted by this music. So even though my voice isn't the greatest nowadays, I continue to try and introduce some of the songs into the teaching, so that because I know that's an attracting feature, that people will hear the truth clothed in melody, and following the old axiom is that a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. Otherwise, you're sitting listening to 3 hours of stark jnana yoga, and maybe that's a little bit of an overload. But even that's intended. It's called the sponge method. The mind is the sponge, and you inundate it with so much wisdom that ignorance has no hold on you anymore. And then you go home later and you squeeze out the sponge, that which you can't digest or don't need yet, both. And then you come back again for another infusion. So that transmission of knowledge takes place week to week, month to month. And eventually, if you learn it, it takes place lifetime to lifetime. We were talking this morning, why didn't Ramana Maharshi have teachers? Because even the avatars have teachers. Buddha took 2 Samkhya teachers before he went into the wilderness. That's 550 years before Christ. Ramakrishna took a teacher on Tantra, a woman teacher. He took a teacher of Advaita Vedanta, Totapari, and he took a Muslim teacher when he was practicing the Muslim religion. Govinda Rai was his name, I think. So he took these different teachers, and he didn't need them, not for proving anything to himself. He'd already learned everything he needed to know, and he was coming here for our sake. But he has to take a teacher to show us, yes, this is necessary. Besides, if he's going to prove the universality of all religions, it's going to be even more impressive, make an impression on people, that is, if he does it through traditional sources and teachers. And then it's going to have that authority behind it. So that's something else that can be added to this knowledge of avatar, which is not usually very very well taught or known. It's not like a kind of a collection of things you can present, teaching style about the avatars. Basically, Leela Jan is the thing with avatar. Leela Jan means meditation on their play, on their sport. I mean, the sport of Christ is seen in evidence on every lawn in the neighborhood at Christmas time, right? The manger, the 3 wise men, you can go up there and look on it, you'll see that. But probably you want to sit down and meditate on those neon lights, because the cops will come and get you. You can look from a distance, but don't get close to my Leela Jan. See, that's my Leela. So whether it's Ram or Krishna or Christ or Buddha, they all had a life. That life is sacrosanct. It's an example of Dharma. They're the best exemplars of Dharma. So that's more for meditation. You actually go in. It's the highest meditation on God with form you could probably attain, is to meditate on the lifetime of the Buddha, if you're a Buddhist, you see, and everything he went through, including his long meditation under the bo tree, or his main teachings. Sukshma Jan, the teachings of the avatars, mixed with Leela Jan, meditation on their sportive play, is a powerful combination. We talk about putting jnana and bhakti together, there you have it. Usually you put meditation and wisdom together. That's the combination. Or you put karma with devotion. But here you can take jnana, wisdom, and put it with devotion, and it's called Leela Jnana. So that's the way that you usually understand the emanation of God, the incarnation of God, the manifestation of divinity, or the avatar. We don't mean that in a Hollywood sense, by the way. I mean it in the true spiritual sense of the term, Sanskrit term, avatar. It's not just a rock band or something of that ilk, you see. But it has to be also reserved for that divine soul who's a rarity once in every 500, 700 years. So saying that, then coming to more of a storyboard than a chart. It's just, when I started out, I thought I'd make storyboards, but then I thought, well, these are really charts more than storyboards. But here is an example of a kind of early storyboard I made based upon Sri Ramakrishna's Radiant Road to Self-Realization. I don't want to take it at length, but I want to use it as a way of showing how an avatar descends, because that's the meaning of the word. that which descends. Avatar. Descends out of where? The sky? No, don't look up to pray. It comes inward ascension style out of the great light of consciousness, Brahman, through the Word, through the Trinity, through the rishis and saints and seers, into the realm of the gods, into the realm of the ancestors, into the realm of the human beings, like that. That's how it descends. It comes out from inside of the kingdoms of heaven, and it goes through every one of them on its way, and then it'll retrace its step up the amber stairs of birth and death, as I was saying, in like fashion when it gives up the body. So the body to it is an association. It's an add-on. It's a necessary vehicle in order to reach those who are embodied. And I was saying today is Easter, so the resurrection to me, the meaning of it, is not based upon the body, the dead body coming back to life. That doesn't happen. Well, maybe in a hospital occasionally. But basically it means the subtle body has produced a vision for the followers, Mary Magdalene and others. See, they will see the subtle vision of Christ because he's projecting it out of his subtle body and he's making them see it, just like Moses saw a burning bush and so forth. Paul saw Christ on the road to Damascus. So Christ had been dead for centuries. His body, what was he seeing? He was seeing a manifestation of his subtle body through the causal body. He was impressing upon you as a vision. So everything from a ghost, which is a sub-reality, there's a whole level of reality called pitris, or bhutas, means disembodied souls who are unresolved in their karma. They don't have a place to go. They're floating. They're in the sunken grounds, the patalas, and they're floating. And if they've been one place on earth, like say this house for a long time, then you're sitting in this house one night and you see them appear again. Because they're not in mastery of their emanation like an avatar is, but they're just thinking about that place they spent 50 or 60 or 70 years, so all of a sudden a manifestation of their subtle body will show up there and you'll say it's a ghost, you see. So that's coming out of the subtle body of that being, which is unresolved, as we say. But in the case of an avatar, fully resolved karma, absolutely no karma, as Krishna says in the Gita, karma, vikarma, and akarma, what's to do, what's not to do, and how not to do it all. The art of non-action, they're masters of that. And so they can make you see these various visions of themselves. And of course you'll have to be tuned to it. If you're not, then they're going to have to penetrate through your ignorance to make you see it. So there has to be a receptacle and a transmitter. It's like Ramakrishna said, somebody's furiously sending an emergency message through a telegraph down to the next village. And the person on the other end is just waiting for a message to come through. And it's not happening. Because there's a break in the wire. Somewhere along the phone line in the jungle, some monkeys have been up there messing around with the wires, you see, it's caused a break. So they have to send out a crew, repair that, find it, repair it, and then the message gets through. So that's Ramakrishna's plain story about Indian village life and transmitters and receivers, basically to evoke a sort of understanding in us that if you're open to the transmission of the teacher, the guru, the saint, the seer, the sage, or the divine incarnation, then you're going to be receiving messages from them all the time. Maybe they'll come in different forms too. It won't be like, oh, God spoke to me with a voice of thunder. That can happen, like it happened to Moses. But it can also be intimated in the most subtlest, sweetest ways, and just something that occurs to you in your everyday life. And you have to have a subtle consciousness that's that refined in order to detect it as a manifestation from higher consciousness, if you want to put it that way. So I wanted to use this chart to show you how a being like an avatar comes down. This was actually kind of an accident for me because I was writing a book of Ramakrishna stories. I was taking the Gospel of Ramakrishna and extracting every story out of it. I had a plan to extract every teaching out of it later, but I haven't gotten around to that yet. But I wanted to take every actual story and give a little commentary on it. So it's in this library now the stories of Ramakrishna, of Sri Ramakrishna. So in doing so, I had to categorize all these stories eventually on the computer, and in order to categorize them, I had to put them into different headings. So these are the different headings that happened. And so when I put them into headings, I said, this looks like a road. This looks like a pathway that the avatars follow, or that any being could follow. And I usually teach it ground up, but I wanted to show you in this way how out of Brahman, due to the power of Shakti, the avatar comes into embodiment out of divine love, in a state of unity, in possession of the truth, and shows us samadhi. At the break, one of my students said, in the first half, you'd only told us 2 of the reasons why Ramakrishna came: to bring the mother reality into our attention, and to show the teaching of universality of all religions. So I said, well, in Ramakrishna's case, there's probably 2 or 3 other competitors for that third one. But I would say to show samadhi is one of them, one of the most important. We never saw such a copious map of samadhis that ran across the being of Sri Ramakrishna in any other incarnation in human record. This man was a copious map of samadhis, and he was also off the map with a lot of his samadhis into formless samadhi. So that's a very wonderful teaching, not just to say, oh, Master, you're a copious map of samadhis, but he was actually, again, being exemplar and saying, here, samadhi is your true nature. I'll show you how to have it. And then after I have it, please have it yourself, you see. My teacher made a remarkable statement once, and he was going on like this. He said, in the West, you think of the divine incarnation as a savior. But on the Eastern horizon, we don't think of him as a savior. We think of him as an exemplar. Very profound saying if you use the Viveka Gyan, the discrimination of your own intelligence, to say that, oh, I see, we've been taking the avatar as a savior and saying, please save me, and therefore becoming weak and relying on prayer and so forth. Prayer that quite often is asking for things that the avatar doesn't want you to have. Maybe knows they're not good for you. But on the Eastern horizon, we're thinking of him as an exemplar. That's why we have so many of him coming out of the Trinity. I've said they come through the Trinity because there are avatars in Vaishnavism, 10 of them, and one of them hasn't come yet. If you might have heard that teaching, Kalki is still the coming avatar. Buddha was the last one. And so they're talking about Kalki now being the next one. So Vaishnavism has this idea of the 10 avatars. I mean, there's a song about it that's very beautiful too. I don't know if I have it up here. I could sing you the last verse of it, I think. Shri Jaya Deva Kaverida Mudita Mudaram Shrinu Shupadam Shukadam Bhavasaram Keshavadrita Dasavidarupa Jai Jagadish Hare, Jai Jagadish Hare. And then you sing Jai Jagadish Hare, Jai Jagadish Hare. And we go on like that singing, and then I sing you 9 other verses all about the 9 other avatars. Well, Jayadeva, this great songwriter who put this together, says, O Mahavishnu, Keshava, Achyuta, Arisundana, Bhagavan, Govinda, Rishikesha, Jaganavisha, Jaganivasa, Janardana, Keshava, Krishna, Madhava, Madhusudan, Purushottama, Varshneyi, Vasudeva, Vishnu, Yadava, Yogeshvara, thou of many names and illustrious forms. Thou who descends as the avatar to save living beings, please accept this hymn to thee by the humble poet Jayadeva. May it bestow goodness and joy, the essence of life on everyone. Victory unto thee. The 10th verse of Dasa Avatara. Dasa means 10, so about the 10 avatars. In the previous verse he's singing Keshava Drita Buddha Sharira. Sharira means form. You came in the form of the Buddha last time. So Vaishnava actually accepts Lord Buddha as one of its avatars, which sort of points the finger to the fact that he was an Indian man He didn't say, a soul. Zen came later. He's not a Chinese man. He was an Indian man. So India, they looked to India for the birthplace of Lord Buddha. And now the borders have shifted, so he's actually Nepalese. But the Nepalis are using that as a matter of great spiritual pride, and I hope aspiration. Because when I was there a year and a half ago, I was corrected when I said he was a Hindu man. No, sir, he's Nepali. I didn't keep track of my political borders, and they're shifting. So he comes out of Brahman via the power of Shakti. Because Brahman and Shakti are one, like fire and its heat, like water and its wetness. And that's the unity of Shiva Shakti idea in Tantra and Brahma Shakti idea in Vedanta. Off of the summit of enlightenment, you see. I put little facets in there to give us an idea. And with divine love and in possession of unity and truth, he has samadhi in view of all of humanity. Some of them think he's a madcap and he's crazy and needs to be committed. But actually he is very committed. He's extremely committed to the truth and to all of these higher principles, and he wants you to get committed too. And he has accompanying, as we said, to this idea of universality. He knows that all religions are innately one. They're not. He doesn't have to come here to prove them to be one, unless you have a hard time with that. And then he's going to help you understand the innate or intrinsic oneness of all religion, which is why I've been saying lately, all religion is indigenous to your soul. There's no such thing as a foreign religion. Thank you. No such thing as a foreign religion. So if we want to really be kind, or we really want to be judicious, just, what to speak of wise, then we should start looking into Islam. It's here upon us. And we should start making the Sufis and the Mohammedans, those practitioners, good friends of ours. They're the new kid on the block. Something new has a lot to offer. Muslim is the new religion. Muhammad, being very recent. All the other religions, Christianity is rather still new. 2,000 years is not that much of a period. And before that, Buddhism is 550 years before Christ. Buddha, that is himself, and its march. So we look back in time and we see these ancient religions, but we see that all of them are indigenous to our soul. That should be the mindset we adopt. That's universality. And he already has it in spades. He already knows this. This is the Vedanta Dindima. This is the conclusion of everything that he lives in. Now come down a little further and you see that direct perception would be the next step. And then you take that turn, that very stark turn of understanding form and formlessness. If you were coming the opposite direction, this would be a very difficult thing to attain. You'd be having the samadhis of grace, the samadhis of auspicious timing, the samadhis of knowledge, the samadhis of compassion, the samadhi of renunciation, but you could not quite get to the samadhi of formlessness. That is reserved for beings who know themselves to be the Atman, to know themselves to be Buddha nature, to know themselves, I and my Father are one style. So that's going to be a very cutting edge kind of formlessness. Remember, there's a kind of formlessness that is nature in abeyance. And people are mistaking that for reality. In other words, form, fine. Hopefully divine form. Deification of form, better. But then you get to formlessness of deep sleep. That's not samadhi, because you're not getting transformed in it, are you? If we all got transformation in deep sleep, we'd all be looking at each other as enlightened beings, and we'd all be radiating the truth. And unfortunately, that's not the case. We're still dealing with the things of the world, and in various ways. So the idea of formlessness in deep sleep is exactly in accord with what they call unmanifested prakriti. That is, nature held in abeyance. If you study it as an alambana for your meditation, you'll realize that's where all form came from. You might as well put an Om sign right about there, you see, because that's where you see everything go back into Om, and you'll see everything come back out of Om. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. Then you begin to understand that Triputi and how it's a double door into form, into formlessness and then back out of form. That's why Om as a mantra is superlative. If you don't have a teacher and you can't get a mantra and you don't have a path yet, you still can chant Om. And even the mere chanting of it will give you a very deep level of understanding. Even without studying the scriptures, they say that's how powerful the word is. It'll suggest itself to you. If you have hidden some scars of spirituality or religion back inside of your mind that aren't manifesting yet, then Om will bring them out, just saying the word. That's why they call it Dirga Pranava. You introduce it with your breath, right? In breath, Puraka, held breath, Kumbhaka, expelled breath, Rechaka, and you go Om, and A, U, and M are formed by the palate and the tongue in such a way that you understand. It's called Dirga Pranava, one very long recitation of the word. And you do it each morning before meditation. So it's a very powerful practice that even by itself ushers in enlightenment of a kind and also wakens up your hidden samskaras. At the very least, it would bring you some sort of peace. Have you ever just felt peace by sitting and chanting one word, you see, like that? Oh, I feel much better now, thank you, you see. So that form and formlessness, anyway, stop to talk about it a little bit because it's, I'd say, the last duality that the mind will contemplate. Just prior to that would be bondage and liberation. Those are the two most subtle dualities of all. Dualities like pleasure and pain, get over it as quick as you can. Dualities like dharma and adharma, find your swadharma. But if you get to that level of reaching the formlessness, then you'll want to start contemplating form and formlessness as a duality and try and, as the song in India, I could sing it for you, goes, take two black rocks and smash them together. That's what Mother Kali does. She takes the black rock of form and the black rock of formlessness and she smashes them together into smithereens, and what's left over is non-duality. Mm-hmm. So form and formlessness as concepts are getting in the way of this final attainment of a higher station of consciousness. So obliterate them. And you'll do that by knowing them, right? By contemplating them, not by running away. Well, I don't think I'll think about that. No, you think about it. You have a word for it. If you have a word for it, you can think about it. And if you can think about it, you can transcend it by coming to know it, see? So form and formlessness, very important. All of these things then he will show, like Ramakrishna did, how to take a teacher, as we were talking about already. Grace, that is this very beautiful and unfigurable quotient in the formula of spiritual life is grace. Even the seers don't really know. They all say, well, I had samadhi, but I think it was by grace that happened. I didn't feel like I really deserved it. Somehow Mother's grace gave it to me. So they all say that. Auspicious timing, very important. That has to do with your karmas, your gunas, and grace of the Divine Mother, whether or not you will arrive at an auspicious timing where you will see through Maya. And Maya kicks in right here, you see. God in the world, renunciation and compassion, and knowledge, and Maya all sort of form a nice composite package right at this bend, the mountain range of realization. So he's coming down into these levels of consciousness. Now this level all has to do with the devotees, karma and reincarnation, and concentration. That's a long sweep. And then up here you're attended by these qualities of devotion, faith, guilelessness, that was one of Sri Ramakrishna's favorite words, and character, and there's of course the mountain of meditation that you learn. So these things all have to do with what we call Dharma Mega Samadhi. It's a kind of samadhi in itself where it means rain cloud of virtues. You've discovered all these virtues in yourself before you went looking for them, and the more you searched for them, the quicker they ran away from you. The ego tried to claim them and it couldn't. But then when you sit and meditate and so forth, all of a sudden you find that these all exist in you already. Just like Shakti exists in Brahman, like burning power exists in fire. Yathagnurdahika Shakti Ramakrishna Stita Hiya Sarva Vidya Swarupam Tam Shardam pranamamyaham. She exists in him as the burning power exists in fire. So they're one and the same. They used to ask Holy Mother, should we meditate on Ramakrishna, who's now passed, or should we meditate on you? She said, we're one and the same. Take your pick. Whoever you favor. And maybe sometimes you feel like meditating on male, and sometimes you meditate on the goddess, you see. So that's your choice, isn't it? That's what auspicious timing is. Sometimes it's time for you to realize the Divine Mother. Other times you don't know anything about her and you're thinking about God as male. It happened historically, didn't it? It's been God as male all this time. But all this time is only 2,000 or 3,000 years. That's not very long. Mm-hmm. India started out as a matriarchy, most likely, in the Tantric period. They're uncovering, images of the goddess in the ancient excavations now. So there was every reason to believe that the Tantrists were there very early on, before it was even called Tantra. Tantra means that which saves. So Shiva and Shakti were there in the very beginning, the idea of male divinity, female divinity, and their union. Again, their natural union, not that you have to put them together. Does the burning power of fire go running looking for fire? Mm-hmm. See, it's already inherent in it. Just so in that way, realization is inherent in you. Samadhi is inherent in you, but you're going to have to realize it, that's all. God is in mankind, you have to bring it out somehow. Oil is in sesame seed. How much effort is it going to take to get it out, you see? So who picked up a sesame seed and said, gee, I think I'm going to get some oil out of this? Mm-hmm. And why would they go take the trouble to invent a press and have a harvest and press it and get a few vials of it and taste it and see, find out how nutritious it is? All that work just to find out oil and sesame seed. That's what they say you have to do to find out the divinity in mankind. It's hidden. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, when I walked along the water tank, it's a lake, see, I'd see these little bulwarks underneath, and that's where the fish and the crabs are hiding. So the wise fishermen, they stick their net under there. They don't go out in the lake and try and chance it, you see. But there's these hidden pockets of fish and crabs back under edibles, you see. So he said that's what man is like. There's these hidden qualities, divine qualities, guilelessness, faith, devotion, compassion, back in those hidden recesses where divinity exists in mankind. And you have to go find them out, chase them out of hiding. So around that corner you see concentration, discrimination, self-surrender. Remember, we're coming down the scale, down the ladder, down the radiant road. You get to chanting of God's name, prayer, and worship. There's the temple, you see. Holy company and sadhana you're going to need. So this really is the gradual rise of rectification from all of these things, reaching this pinnacle, this higher pinnacle of steep ascent of aspiration. You're gaining qualities. You're practicing the Dharma. Now, everything from there on down, you can see, begins to wane or pale. You have yearning for God, which Ramakrishna said was the very first sign that you're seeking freedom. They used to go to him and say, the Hindu men and so forth would go to him and say, "Sir, what is the way?" That was the classic question in India at the time, in the 1800s. "Sir, what is the way?" If you said that, then said, "Oh, this must be a questioner, you see, a real questioner." And Ramakrishna's answer was always, yearning for God is the way. That's the beginning. If you can cry one tear for God, then you have yearning. But you're crying jugs of tears for wife and money and children and lands, you see. But you're not crying one sincere tear for God. So it all starts with yearning to be free, or for God realization or enlightenment, or however you want to put it. Yearning to be a better person would be just as good, to remake yourself, to improve yourself. So that's what rectification is, isn't it? So everything before that, you see, begins to come down into a more shady. There's duty and dharma, which is, according to Vivekananda, I can almost quote him verbatim, duty is the burning midday sun that is burning away at the very vitals of humanity. It's the hot midday sun. So duty is keeping people from going on. this is my duty, I have to stay here, you see. And I can't therefore move on in spiritual life. So duty and dharma is a very intermediate type of level. That is, it gets you out of adharma because you want to keep the mind busy. What's that? Idleness is the devil's playground. So an idle mind is brooding. See, if you leave it idle for too long, it's going to start brooding. And shadows and machinations and problems are going to enter into it. And pretty soon you have a habit of that. It's called a diseased or fragmented mind. So you want to keep the mind busy. So to that end, duty and dharma, very helpful. Anything prior to that would have been here at the foothills of attainment. You see, these are just the very basic attainments that you're talking about. Then comes the problems. You can see the gauge on the your left-hand side of the chart started out with eternal principles. It comes down to practices, then it comes down to prerequisites, then it comes down to impediments, you see. Well, the impediments, occult powers, stiff, stark impediment, sensationalism, right there at the mounds of Maya attainment, those are different than true attainment. Occult power, sensationalism, judgment and criticism, pretty soon you get to the flatlands of groundless hope. There you have the 6 passions, the 8 fetters, egotism, desire, worldliness, and there's the house of the world. Christ says, birds have nests, foxes have holes, but the Son of Man hath no place to lay his head. Yet there he is laying his head in the flatlands of groundless hope. On emptiness, he's basing his house on shifting sands. Cannot build it on shifting sands. You have to build it on the bedrock of spirit, he said. And there is even lower to go than just worldliness. As we saw by this chart, you can go lower than just worldliness. You can begin to descend into evil doings. So insincerity, attachment to wealth, ignorance and bondage, wickedness and delusion, that's called moving through the graveyard of futile pursuits and ending up in the valley of delusion. So this chart is how a demonstration of this pristine consciousness comes down and works its way down into all these levels of human consciousness, even right on down into the animals, the insects, and the plants, because as we just chanted at the beginning of the class, that Atman is in everything. It's in every being, but it's also in everything. But it's not a thing, not a form. So it's there as the substratum or foundation of stones. Atman would be there. The stone has its stoneness because the Atman's there. Gold has its goldness because the Atman is there. Silverness has its silverness because the Atman is there. Woman has her womanliness because Atman is there. Man has his manliness because Atman is there. Take that away and there's nothing. So that's how formless it is, and that's how all-pervasive it is. And it even transcends qualities, doesn't it? Because qualities are something that you acquire along the way of spiritual ascent. They were in you all the time, but you're enacting the lila, the play of acquisition. If you're acquiring these things, it leads, to what is Caesar's. But if you're acquiring these things, you're taking to yourself what is the Lord's, to put an Easter turn on it. So a chart here of Ramakrishna's radiant road to self-realization. You wouldn't want to be Elmer Fudd and try and say that. Sri Ramakrishna's radiant road to realization. You'd want to not have Elmer Fudd as a speaker at your Sangha, unless you want to crack them up. Now, in these 2 charts and these 2 halves, we have been able to present to you a composite picture of the avatar. Now, let's look at it philosophically a bit in these 2 charts, because I think there's just enough time to do so. This is called Chittabhasa, and this is called Stainless Cause of the Universe. This is a teaching of Vedanta. This is a teaching from Lord Vashishta. Now, looking at the Chittabhasa first, because I've already introduced it in a way. That is, when I said that everything is a suggestion from the causal and subtle body by the soul who's using the causal and subtle body. They're suggesting things to you just like I am now in teaching. I'm waking up pockets of knowledge in you that are already there by suggesting things that perk those areas and release those crabs and fish of knowledge in those hidden bulwarks under the lake and under the banks. So in that same way, Chittabhasa works that way. You can see here, basically, all is Brahman. The avatar is here, always one with Brahman. And through this rain of Mahashakti, this rain of grace, see, there she is, always with him but hidden. Everything comes down through that Mahashakti area, and then direct emanation of pure conscious awareness is there. It's from the buddhi that we see that. Here, we cannot see it as anything but formless, but as soon as it hits the human intelligence, the intelligence of the gods and goddesses, the intelligence of the Trinity, and particularly the intelligence of the saints and seers and sages, and the Trinity, then it turns into reflection of consciousness. So the Vedantist is never caught off guard by Maya, nor is he taking wooden nickels. He's not letting anything masquerade for Brahman. Brahman is Brahman, and there are some 10 or 12 ways that the Brahma Sutras treat that. Brahman is Brahman, Brahman is consciousness, so forth. They want you to concentrate only on Brahman as its own separate reality, because that's all there is Brahman. It is the only reality. So in the highest Advaitic courts, those teachings that are non-dual, if you've ever read the Brahma Sutras, you'll know what I mean. They're like the Zen koan of India. They're so sparse and so subtle that you can't understand it. You have to have a commentator. What's he saying? What's that scripture saying in those 5 words? And then you have to use inference and implication and so forth to get at those teachings. So they're leaving it very, very without doubt, free of doubt, that Brahman as absolute reality is completely formless, and that we begin to see everything as a form when it hits the cosmic intelligence, the buddhi. Chittabhasa is the very powerful word in Sanskrit. Chidbhasa, the reflection of consciousness through the intellect. So, for instance, again, if you saw a burning bush or you saw Christ on the road to Damascus, then you'd be seeing not Christ and not a burning bush. That doesn't happen. You're seeing a reflection of consciousness through your own intelligence. And there's a power behind that that's causing you to see that. So you don't take appearances for Brahman ever. No appearance can show you Brahman. Only Brahman can show you Brahman. And Ramakrishna told a beautiful story about that, about King Himalaya, the king of the snow mountains, right, the ancient mountains. All of a sudden, he and his wife found out that the Divine Mother was going to be born to them in human form. Her name was Umavati. She's the first name that appears in the ancient scriptures of India for Divine Mother reality. Umavati or Himavati, the mother of the eternal snow mountains. So they found out by divine vision, Chittabhasa, that this great being, Divine Mother of the Universe, was going to be born to them as their baby. So when he was born, King Himalaya knew this was the Divine Mother of the Universe. So as she grew up, he was always constantly attending upon her. And so as soon as she could form words, he took his chance. King Himalaya was a great spiritual opportunist. He said, "Oh, baby Uma, can you show me Hanuman? I always wanted to have a vision of Hanuman." "Why, sure, Father, here." And all of a sudden, King Himalaya was thrown into this inner Chittabhasa area of seeing visions, which are not Brahman. They are the reflection of our intelligence in our subtle body. And he saw Hanuman and talked with Hanuman and had his fill of darshan with Hanuman. So King Himalaya was not satisfied. He asked for visions of Shiva, asked for visions of Krishna, asked for visions of every god and god he could possibly think of, and got them. Then finally, he's thinking, what else can the Divine Mother of the Universe, and as my child, grant me? There's the formless Brahman. So he went to Uma and said, "Dear sweet child, can you give me a vision of the formless Brahman?" And little baby Uma said, "Sorry, Father, that's not possible. You have to live with enlightened beings to get that vision. You have to visit the company of holy men who have had that vision to get that vision. So it marks it off as the most singular and rare of all realizations. It's called nirvikalpa. It's called nirvana. It's called satori, not for no good reason. That is the form of samadhi, and there's only one of them. There are dozens of samadhis in form. We just showed them to you. You see all these different forms you can have. Samadhis of compassion, samadhis of love, samadhis of this and that. But the form of samadhi is unique among all samadhis. Nirvikalpa, read my lips, or nirvana. That word nir means extinct. The candle has been blown out. Form has been extirpated. Name has gone away. Space has disappeared. Name, form, and space all gone in it. So what's left over is just nothing but the essence of consciousness, the light of Brahman. And that light is reflecting through the cosmic intelligence called the Mahat, or the Trinity, Brahma, Lord Brahma. And it's humming there as a word called Om. As it comes down, Chittabhasa is reflective consciousness. It hits these other areas. This is Brahmagyan, wisdom, spiritual wisdom appearing as various eternal principles. First, you'd say, prana and akasha, because God needs an energy to manifest himself with and a space to go to. And in accordance with your question this morning, that we were talking about prana and akasha and how they act together, I was explaining that prana is the more sentient energy that God will use to manifest himself in the form of an avatar. It's like Shakti, only Shakti in her true formless nature is one with Brahman, but when she appears through this process, she appears as prana. Eventually as psychic prana, then finally as prana as life force, then finally as prana in food. That's Shakti appearing in everything, from the causal to the subtle to the gross. Everything is infused with energy, isn't it? Food has energy in it. You cannot live by bread alone, but nonetheless your body is living by that bread, by that energy in that form. So you'd have to say, well, Shakti is just everywhere. And if you realize that, then you're having samadhi like Ramakrishna was all the time. He was seeing Shakti everywhere. His food was Shakti. People walking in were Shakti. He was in a non-dual state, so he could see that all the time. And when he came out of the non-dual state, he would still see everything as Shakti. So he was aware of that prana. Now, akasha, on the other hand, is space that prana will infill. They say nature abhors a vacuum. Well, so does consciousness, because a vacuum is a void, and a void has a word, and a word infers that someone has seen it and named it, so it cannot be the ultimate reality. You should avoid the void, therefore. You should start looking for fullness rather than emptiness. Emptiness is a stage. So when you see this formless, you're going to see it invested with prana. It has an energy that it flows with, like a great Garuda bird. That's really the symbology behind the great Hindu dragon, if you want to call him that, a Garuda. There's even an airlines called Garuda Airlines. I always wanted to ride it. See if I had a vision of Garuda on it. But Garuda is that great bird that takes Vishnu, one of the Trinity, on his rounds. He's going, so I'll talk about the rounds of birth and death. He's going to see the people who are laboring under the delusion of the rounds of birth and death. So he's going to go to every loka, every akasha, every world, and he does that through the prana. They've described prana in the Upanishads as a spider web, and Mother is the spider. So she's got a strand going everywhere, and somebody just touches it. Anyone, anything touches that strand. She, through vibration, she knows exactly what's happening there, and she can go there, or not. And she can also take the web and bring it back into herself. So they've described this web as the prana coming out from the purveyor of prana, the matrix, the the matra, the matrix. You see the connections in all the words are mother power. So this is where energy is infusing. And if you look at the prana and the akasha and you take them as Brahman, then you're deluded. Brahman is Brahman. These are not Brahman. This is where things get dicey in the area of spiritual discrimination. It's easy to take wooden nickels or accept the unreal for the real. course, down here, people are doing it all the time. It's like the quote here, right? Very nicely put. That in this age of darkness, when viciousness and vile things become normal mode of behavior, then you know the Dharma is on the wane and Adharma is waxing. You see? And there has to be a great soul to come to make that, put that balance right again. And you are part of the emanation of that great soul. It's your responsibility as a follower of the avatar avada, the path of the knowledge of the great ones who come, whether they be avatars or even if they're seers or acharyas or teachers or whatever, to take their words and put them into action and help achieve that balance again for the world. Now, if you go a little bit further down the spectrum, because we're talking about avatar coming down, right? Because that's the meaning of the word, avatar, to descend, that which descends. I'd hate to say he or she because you don't want to bring gender into it yet. But gender does come into it down here, and you start thinking about the human ego-mind complex. Thought, conceptualization, visions, imagination, projection, invention, desire. These are some of the words that you can pin on that overall heading called sankalpa, with time, with imaginings. Sankalpa means, kalpanika means imaginings in time. They gave it that heading because they knew that you had hit Maya by now, and it was beginning to become dense and confusing, multivaried, multifarious, Shatavadana, 1,000 things were beginning to happen on all different levels, and then the soul is going to get distracted and confused if it's not careful. So it's hit Maya, it's hit the world of name and form in time and space, based in cause and effect. Cause and effect has kicked in, so now you're in a dangerous realm, a precarious position, the soul, the embodied soul has come. So Kalpanika, imaginings in time, they called it that because they think this is the way of thinking from Lord Vishishta thousands of years prior to Christ all the way down to present time, that the universe is a manifestation of the mind. It's not created by God, and it's not created by nature. God is not in the picture, and nature is just a material cause of the universe. It's not the subtle cause, it's not the primal cause, it's not the remote cause, and it's not the causal cause. The word is that. So they've been thinking from time out of mind about everything coming from the word via vibration. It's called Shabda Brahman in Vedanta. And Srishti Rahasya in Tantra, the secret of all creationism is that the mind has been projecting things all the time. It starts with the cosmic mind, comes down to the mind of the gods and goddesses, comes down to the mind of the ancestors, comes down to the mind of humans, and it's all Chidabhasa. It's all reflected consciousness. That's how they've escaped the misnomer or the problem or the desecration of considering Brahman a form. They've never considered Brahman a form. It must remain formless. It must remain transformationless. Nevertheless, it's all pervasive. How about that for an ideology or a philosophy or a truth to meditate upon? That it's not in the thing, it's not the thing, but it's not even in the thing, it's the foundation of all things. How it can be all pervasive and at the same time not identified with the form. Keeping that sacrosanct, then, they began to see how Chidabhasa worked its way down the spectrum, and when it got to a causal level, and when it got to a mental level called subtle level, they began to understand how the worlds of name and form got projected by the mind, how everything is a thought, everything is an idea. The tree is an idea, the river is an idea, the ocean is an idea, the sun, a billion suns are idea. The cosmic mind first, and then they come into being later as what we would call physical objects. The mind has the congealing power to do this. And it also has the dissolving power, and that's what people don't know. They can create something, they can sustain it, but they can't dissolve it because they're attached to it, right? If you love your life, you shall lose it, right? You shouldn't love your life. You should hate your life, because life is illusion, because life is mated with birth and death, isn't it? And those are not true. So what you want to love is eternal life. And as soon as you do that or can do that, then birth, life, and death become dharmic, and you have no problem. But as long as you don't do that, it's adharmic, and you're fraught with problems. And the main problem is suffering. Everyone's business. From avatar to ant, everyone suffers. It's just that the avatars are suffering consciously, and everyone else is suffering unconsciously. If you suffer consciously, then you're taking it on as a sacrifice. Otherwise, birds and beasts suffer, and they don't know how to get out of it. And human beings are beast-like too, bestial, and they don't know how to get out of it. So they make matters worse by drawing everyone else into it. Birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death in rounds. The first avatar complained bitterly against that. He was just like Buddha. That is Ramchandra, we sang about him, complained bitterly about people engaging in rounds of birth and death and ignorance. He was a teenager when he went out of his father's castle, just like Buddha did thousands of years later. And he saw suffering, and he came back, and he wasn't the beaming, happy, inspired Sri Ram anymore, the apple of everyone's eye. He was this very quiet, very sobered, very studious, very indrawn young man. Changed him completely to see what was outside of King Dasaratha's palace. Thousands of years later, Lord Buddha did the same thing. He left King Sakya's palace and had those experiences of the four great signs, they call them. He saw suffering in 4 ways. The diseased man, the old man, the corpse being burned on the funeral pyre. He saw all that for the first time, and it just made him hands off of the whole thing. So it was like the avatar only needs that one thing to make him remember where he is and why he came there. That might be why they're so protected for a while, inside of, a palace, you see. Other avatars, I think a manger will do, you see. I'll be protected by non-notoriety. I'll be born as a carpenter's son, and nobody will even expect it, you see. I'll come upon humanity later. I have a devious plan, you see. Nobody's going to recognize me for 30 years, maybe for 700 years, because Christ really wasn't known that well for hundreds of years. Neither was Buddha. His religion almost died in the first 500 years since his passing. And they had to make us householders interested in it, because it was only for monks in the beginning, and it began to die because how many of us want to be monks? Raise your hands. Why all the stillness? So, that's renouncing internally and externally. They renounce externally, we must renounce internally. That is, know this is all Chittabhasa. It's all a reflection. We should not believe in it in the least. We should only believe in Atman, Brahman connection. We are Atman, all abiding, and Brahman is that reality. They have many ways of saying that. 4 particular ones called the Great Mahavakyas. I'll talk to you about that next week. Now, as you come down the spectrum and you get into these cosmic imperatives called time and space, they also go very much with energy and inner worlds. So you're talking about 5 subtle elements, 5 gross elements, the physical universe, and the flow of events, phenomena, they're called, and karma that comes from that. And of course, that's getting even more convoluted. Nobody can work their way out of that. Even the avatar fears to go there. Ask anyone about karma, you're probably going to have to go to Sri Krishna, because Sri Krishna knows karma better than anyone. And he's an archetypical soul, so he could probably explain to you, like he did to Arjuna on the battlefield, why this karma has come to him, and what is the karma of everyone else on that battlefield. He first puts it in very simple terms. He says, oh, those kings and those princes and those people over there, some of them your family that you're fighting against, this is how the cookie is crumbled. But you should know one thing. None of them were ever born, and none of them will ever die. One of the greatest Mahavakyas of the Gita. There will never come a time when they will die, because there was never a time when they were ever born. Know that, Arjuna, before you go into the battle. See, what better advice for a warrior when he's going into a battle, not just a battle that's war, but a battle where some of his family is on the other side, and he may have to meet them on the battlefield and dispatch them. Not out of revenge, not out of anger, because it's the thing to be done. It's duty and dharma. It's the hot midday sun that's scorching him. He's born a warrior, has to do it. But if he knows that there's no coming and no going, that there's no birth and there's no death, then he can kill them and illuminate them at the same time. See, that's the teaching of Divine Mother. When she kills the asuras, they immediately get dispatched into enlightenment. There are beings on record that are asuric, and they aggravated Divine Mother on purpose so she would kill them so they would get enlightenment. Because they know they're not strong enough to get enlightenment on their own. They know they're asuric, they're dark, and that their tendencies are not good. They're never going to get auspicious timing, you see. So I think I'll go really insult Divine Mother. She'll kill me and I'll be enlightened, you see. So it's sort of like the energy, the prana, you see. We have this saying in our Ramakrishna order, Yogananda Premananda Das Chanye Vaye Cha Parshada Ramakrishna Gata Prana Sarvantan Pranamamyaham. We salute the servants and the servants of the servants of Sri Ramakrishna, because Gata Prana, they have their prana, their life force, merged in him. So we have given ourselves to him, to that great avatar. All of our prana, all of our karmas, everything about us, all of our goodness, we poured into the crucible of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and Swami Vivekananda. See, he's been the one that poured it for us. Give yourself to the Son, he'll give you to the Father. So you get to the Father through the Son. So Ramakrishna got the prana, have our life forces merged in him. Lex and I would look at each other right about now and say, why not? The other would say, yeah, why not? So let's do it. Now, these are cosmic principles. You know about them. 5 subtle elements in sleep. So you have the 5 subtle elements because you're building cloud castles in the sky in your dream world. So you have land, you have water, you have air, you have fire in your sleep too. So there are 5 subtle elements in there. And you have the 5 gross elements in the physical universe too. How much lower could you go, or denser could you go than the physical universe? Human embodiment in it. That is the body, the 5 senses of knowledge, and the 5 senses of action. And this is the karma shaya. What Father of Yoga said, the problem is that the seer has become identified with the seen. And now there's karma to pay. There's the devil to pay. There's no God and there's no devil in our tradition. There's just karma. You see, you're the God and the devil that's suffering or handing out the fruits, as the case may be, of that karma to yourself. It's your own conscience. Note the similarity between the word consciousness and conscience. It's all based in awareness. Now, let's read the 2 quotes. The first one is quite easy, and it's one of the Mahavakyas of Vivekananda's complete works. It says, God is not in the universe is in God. You don't know how many people I've been able to put straight in their thinking by saying that. There are several things which I've used on people from the scriptures that have made a profound effect on people. So, on some people. So I keep them ready to say at a certain auspicious timing to a certain person, and they'll go, marvelous, marvelous. And a lot of their issues will be solved at that point. They make one huge step inward toward realization again. That's one of them. A lot of people think that God is in the universe, and I hear, so it's kind of fun actually just to say, God is not in the universe, and then watch them go, huh? And then come back and say, the universe is in God. And they go, oh, I see. So turning, it's a catchphrase, turning something on its ear like that, because conventional thinking has posited it in such a way that we're taking Brahman, the formless, to be a form. We're taking the world to be real. There is no world outside of Brahman. So if you say this world is Brahman, then you've turned it on its ear, and you're looking at it from a non-conventional standpoint. And that's revolutionary. That's revolutionary to your thinking. And if it's revolutionary to your thinking, then it's going to be grounds for realization. It's going to be radical, not conventional. Now, this is a little longer the way Lord Vashishta puts it. He says, the embodied being is none other than an emanation of the Jnana wisdom of Brahman. Perfect, huh? Emanation, Jnana wisdom, where is it? Brahmagyan. Coming from Brahman as an emanation. Reflected consciousness, or Chittabhasa, is Brahmagyan is the wisdom of Brahman. The hosts of myriad worlds and objects, appearing within endless cycles of time, duly shine as the objective vision and ideation of its inherent consciousness. Your consciousness. You see, the embodied being they're talking about, right? Thus, it is one all-pervading Atman which assumes the name of the Jiva, materializing with the intelligence force of its own innate awareness. So take a nice long couple of sentences like that and chop them up slowly with a pause to consider and apply them to the Chittabhasa teaching in Vedanta, and you can see how these teachings have come out of the minds of the seers after long, long periods of reflection, of contemplation, and of meditation, as we were just saying. Chittabhasa. Now in the remaining 10 minutes, let's look at this chart, which is similar. This is from Lord Vashishta himself. You see there, Ishvaku asks Swayambhuva. Swayambhuva was one of the great souls of the solar line, sunborn, out of which later King Dasaratha and Ram came. The avatars came out of the solar line. So Swayambhuva is one of the great Manus, great minds that all of these families of divine beings came out of later, very early on. So Ikshvaku is one of the kings at that time, and he looked back and he loved Swayambhuva, who is long gone in the body. So he had to have darshan with him. He wanted to ask him something. So when he got this darshan, he said, "Whence came this universe? Can you answer it? For true, with finality for me." So the way it's put here in that story is all-pervasive Brahman, just like here. Then it hits the Shakti powers, just like here, right? So now you have the four Shaktis, though. He is giving it in terms of Jnana Shakti, Icha Shakti, Kriya Shakti, and Drovya Shakti. Icha Shakti is divine will. That's the mother of willpower. Jnana Shakti is the mother of wisdom. And Kriya Shakti is the mother of spontaneity. And Dravya Shakti is the mother who produces materials, like nature. So these are the four main Shakti powers in Tantra. If you want to know a little bit more about Shakti as a cover term, then you look into the Tantras and you'll find out that she has four main aspects, and then, just like Krishna, as we read, hundreds of forms through which her wisdom emanates and gets dispersed and dispensed. She's taking the form of Shiva and turning him into wisdom and then just dispersing it amongst the souls who are interested, who want it. That's her main directive. You can see there on the sidebar, potent Shaktis and many other minor Shaktis all commingling. So I put other little bubbles there because there are other levels of Shakti too that would mix in with those main four. Potent Shaktis. In a kind of a target form again, it's one of our 3 or 4 target kind of charts. You see this inner line here, Atmic reality. And then how the Shakti would penetrate through this Hiranyagarbha, one of the most ancient words in all languages, particularly in Sanskrit, which means really, if you put it into English, it really much looks like what it is, an egg. It's a cosmic egg out of which everything came. So you're talking about the Trinity on down, really. If you look at it in terms of Om, and the teachings of the Trinity, then you'd start calling it in tantric terms like Bindu, Nada, Kalatita. So that's the Trinity you right away think of. Bindu would be like what the Hindu ladies wear here, right? But also that's just to say I'm married. But the Shaktas also wear a red mark here. That means I'm a devotee of the Divine Mother. So when you go to puja, you'll get a kumkum mark there, you see. And you say, oh, I've been to a Divine Mother puja. So I can see you a mile away in India. You say, he's been to Divine Mother puja. You see, he's a Shakta. He worships Mother. And you say, yes, we're proud of it. You see, I'm Mother's boy. So that cosmic egg is under her protection. They say actually that the egg is born from the inchut sound that happens when Shiva and Shakti get together. It's a love sound. That's how the Tantras explain it. Shiva and Shakti come close, and when she comes close to him, a great music called Om strikes up, a humming, and that gives rise to the cosmic egg. And when a cosmic egg bursts and gives birth, it gives birth to all the realms. You can see the difference in approach and explanation between Tantra and Vedanta. So out of that, penetrating that egg, she pervades, right? We call her all-pervasive. Then inside of that egg, when it bursts, gives rise to all of these things. All universes, 5 elements and objects, pretty much what was here, but in a much shorter list. And also emanated, you see, eternal Jnana rays, always like these rays, like raindrops of Dharma Mega Samadhi, infusing all of the world so that everything there is infused with Shakti power. Everything there is infused with intelligence. If you can see that, then you sit to eat, you have a kind of food samadhi. You see, I'm eating my own intelligence. I'm eating my own ideas. Or if the inventor is building a house, I'm constructing a house based on my own ideals. It all happened in my mind first, then it happened outwardly with the help of the 5 elements. If I compose a piece of music, I hear it first, then I put it into an instrument or a series of instruments, and it begins its manifestation. No matter which way you look in any walk of life, the emanation of Jnana rays are how both systems explain it. It's an emanation of wisdom, Chittabhasa. It's coming off the buddhi, your intellect. And that intellect has a very high level to it. Cosmic, you might call it. Even beyond cosmic, because this is called the cosmic egg, right? So beyond what things are cosmic, what a lot of the gurus of the 60s were talking about cosmic consciousness, they were not providing yet for the higher teachings of Shakti and Brahman. They were pretty much focusing on cosmic consciousness, and you wanted to have that as your vision. But actually to penetrate, if you're coming like Ramakrishna's road, if you're coming from ignorance into light and from light into realization, you're going to penetrate that in reverse fashion, and you're going to get to realization of Divine Mother. She will be your guide, which is what I say one of the great facets that Ramakrishna has brought us. Guess what? Holy Mother said, Ramakrishna has come this time for everyone. The avatar of this age has come for everyone. The wise, the learned, and the ignorant, and the evil. Everyone now can get enlightenment by coming to Ramakrishna. He used to say that himself. People of this age will get truth if they come here and eat his own heart. So he meant, come to your own heart. He also said, come to the heart of the avatar. Because if you find your own heart, you'll find Ishvara. You'll find Antaryami. Beautiful song about that, really.
Dharmahana harakam tva dharma karma varakam loka dharma charanasya sarva dharma kovidam jagagehi sevya nicha pavagantri pankajam tam namami deva deva Ramakrishnam Ishwaram.
And it has some 9 or 10 other verses. Tam namami deva deva Ramakrishna Ishwaram. You are that Ishvara form. Ishvara, you are that Antaryami, the inner ruler, immortal, seated in the heart of all things, of all beings. And so the manifestation of that is through intelligence. This is why Buddha named himself after it. Buddhi means intelligence. See? It's non-dual intelligence. but it has the ability to burgeon. In fact, interesting that Bri, the Sanskrit root to this word, means to expand. Now, Brahman does not expand and contract, but its Shakti has the power to do that, you see. So there again, you have to be very careful. You're calling Brahman a form, you're calling Brahman a process, you're assigning evolution and involution to Brahman. Wrongity, wrong. See, you have to discriminate deeper than that. She has the power to burgeon, and she will be in charge of all the worlds of name and form and time and space. Even she transcends them. But you can see why, because they're beginning to outline who she really is. Now, this is an interesting part of the chart, and we have just 5 minutes to explain it. The soul here in the universe can go two different directions, according to this teaching of Lord Vashishta. It can go towards Chinmatra, that is, that which will destroy the ignorance. Or it can associate itself with ego and sankalpa. We already defined the term sankalpa, imaginings in space and time. It can go towards fantasy. It can go towards desire. It can go towards creationism and create illusion or bondage for itself. But if it goes the other direction and associates with Chinmatra, matra, element, like a of Om or U of Om or M of Om is a matra. Matra also means mother, mother particle, mother wisdom. Chin means consciousness, Chinmaya. So Chinmatra means the particle of intelligence in you. If you go towards that, then you can penetrate through and destroy Sankalpa and get to Atman. See, you can fuse your thoughts with Atman. You do not confuse your thoughts with Maya. You fuse your thoughts with Atman. And therefore, you would get to what's called attainment of abhava, or non-existence. They who love their life shall lose it. They who hate their life shall gain it in eternal life. You get to abhava, that is non-existence. You realize that through formlessness, non-existence of form and name and time and space and the suffering and karma that happens inside of Maya, you get to freedom. You get free and you get bliss and knowledge. He says here at the bottom, after calming Sankalpa, contemplates all things with the eye of abhava and wear it like a sword. So we come to that state of one mood, the mood of non-dual awareness, the mood of enlightenment, the mood of illumination. You're coloring everything real. And every time you put on those glasses, everything looks real to you. See, everything is colored with Brahman consciousness. You see everything as Brahman. So that's the way we would look at it in a more of a kind of Yoga Vashishta view, and as compared to the way they would explain it in Advaita Vedanta. And you can see the similarities there are paramount, but the different ways of describing open doors for the mind on both the level of the mind and the heart, the devotion of non-separation, as we were talking about last weekend. So I think that is my presentation about the Advaita of the avatars, and I hope you're on hand next week, which is live streamed. Yes. Is it here in this ashram? Because Pahoa happens the week after, right? So next week we will be here at the Hawaii ashram, and we'll be entering into our second class on the Advaita of the avatars. I'll have at least 2 new charts, I hope, that I should have had ready today, ready for you, called the Mahavakya of the avatars and Progress Towards Freedom. And we will look at the teachings in that way. So I hope you're on hand for that. You're welcome. Your friends are welcome. And now let's end here with a chant. Om Sato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Joitir Gamoya Mrichor Ma Amritam Gamaya Abira Bira Mayeti Rudrayate Dakshinamukam Tenamam Pahinicham Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from darkness to light, from lower truth to higher truth, from the unreal to the real, from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Krishna Dasayam. Hamsaya Vidmahe Paramahamsaya Dhimahi Tano Hamsa